I am Zeno Chroman, publisher of the Surfcasters Journal, and you are watching Surfcasters Journal TV.
Don't ever, ever listen to Billy Joel before you go fishing, because you will definitely not catch fish.
That's it.
It's obviously, really beat up.
Do you ever wonder what the guy next to you has in his plug bag when he's out fishing you? What about if he's John Skinner, the author of Striper Pursuit and The Fishing with Bucktails, two of the most popular books in recent years? Well, we got even better for you than finding out what's in his bag. We managed to nail John down for a few minutes to show us everything that's in the back of his truck when he's fishing. So let's take a look.
I fished last night, so I've got night stuff in here. I got darters, bottle plugs, bucktails, needles, but no poppers. And I always have to throw a pencil in there. I mean, obviously, I don't need to carry a lot of different things in here because I got the truck right next to me. But, pretty much this is it. And there's a bag here with stuff that I really haven't been using much, but I carry anyway. Different, I guess it's like a Tsunami metal lip, but the standards are the Gibbs and lots of Super Strikes, but pretty much pencils, the Super Strike little necks, the needles, both weighted, unweighted. What else we got here? These things, these are deadly. My friend the other day was out working out in the boat and working some whitewater, and it was all small bass. He had over 40 little tiny bass, and then he watched a 46-pounder come up and grab one of these. It's a 7-inch Tsunami. He said the whole time he's thinking, oh my God, a little 7-inch soft plastic, how's the hook going to hold? But it held, and he got the fish, and so that's pretty cool. And yeah, I guess the saying is even elephants eat peanuts or something like that. But this was really a deadly lure when the sand eels were around last year. And it casts about as well as a bucktail, but there were days last year on the sand eel run where, boy, if you didn't have this, you were out of business. And 7-inch to 8-inch, you can just see there's bucktails sticking out everywhere. Always got a lot of bucktails going. What I don't use during the daytime, hardly at all, very little success, are the darters. Great night plugs. This is the standard, the Super Strike. If you had no other darter but this darter right here, yellow Super Strike, you're going to be just fine. This is a great plug. But I've got some other stuff too. There's a Tactical Anglers, a little bit smaller darter. Something that has become a real favorite of mine, the Tsunami Talking Poppers. And yeah, this one's beat up, but it's beat up for a reason because it's seen a lot of use, a lot of fish. This is the 6-inch. I bumped the hooks up one size, and this one's not loaded, but a lot of times what I'll do is just drill a hole, add some water, about 6 cc's, make it a little bit heavier, but it can still float. Just a dynamite plug. So I always have those in the bag. Oh, yeah, and boy, I've got so many plugs. Why would I never need to buy any more bomber-like lures? But, anybody who's been fishing the last couple of years knows about the Daiwa Salt Pro. Yeah, it just casts great. It works heavier water better than most of the minnow plugs. So these are all the things that I write about in the book. I mean, these are all the standard tools. If you've got, the Super Strike, darters, bottles, needles, the poppers, some Gibbs pencils, Salt Pros, bucktails, Tsunami sand eels. Yeah, that pretty much covers a lot of it. And you know what? People get all worked up about colors and all the nice finishes. Here's my favorite bomber right here, right? This thing, when I reach for a bomber, this is the one I go for right here. It's obviously, you know, really beat up. This is an old one. You can tell because it's got a screw eye in the back. And the ones they make today are through wired. These older ones with the screw eyes, they swim a little bit higher. I like them a little bit better. It's not to say that the newer ones are no good. They certainly are. But yeah, there's my favorite bomber right there. That's the one I go for. All right, so yeah, if we're going to do some fishing here, the tide's a little more than halfway in. What I looked for as I drove down the beach, there's a line of white water, so if I cast, it's too deep for me to get out to that bar. There's a trough there, but the troughs are so shallow right now that I don't really have any confidence that there would be fish in them. On the higher ends of the tides, you know, you can see the beach has got some pitch to it, and even a little more pitch down there. On the higher ends of the tides, then there will be some water. So I've driven around and found like a section here where, you know, I can hit a little bit of water, so I can at least, you know, try to work this. I feel like there's probably enough water in there to hold some fish, but at this point there's not too much around. There's some smalls around, but you never know. It could be something in there.
We recently did a very popular video with Montauk surf guy Bill Wetzel on how to fish eels. And a lot of you have asked for an explanation where to fish eels and when to fish eels. This is a follow-up to his very popular video. You can see his original video with this link that we put on the screen. This is a follow-up on his thoughts on when to fish it, how to fish it, and where to fish it.
So people ask me where to fish live eels, you know, when to fish live eels. Really, the time to fish live eels is any time during the year. You know, when they first start in April or May, all the way to December is a good time. But the prime times for me are when the fish are like, when the water temperature is a little bit warmer and there's not those bigger baits, like there's not herring around, bunker around, you know, those bigger juvie weak fish, you know, baits like that. You know, they're bigger baits. The bass are really aggressive on those baits, and they're keying up on those baits. And, you know, you really don't even have to throw an eel because you're throwing darters or whatever to imitate that bait. And, you know, those plugs will work better than the eels a lot of times. My favorite time to throw them is like on, during the summer. When the water temperatures are like in the low 70s, the fish are a little bit more lethargic at that time, and I do some really big fish in Montauk at that time of year. It's a lot of work to catch those big fish, but the eels will help you out to catch them. You know, they see that eel coming through the water at that time of year, and they'll just pounce on it. So really, the best time is any time. Personally, I prefer when the water temperature is a little bit warmer and the baits are different. So really, that period from June to October, really. I'm still throwing eels right now. I mean, it's November right now, I'm still throwing eels. So, but primarily in the back bays. Right now up front, you know, there's a lot of bunker around, there's bigger baits. I'm hoping for the herring soon. So up front, I'm throwing the bigger plugs, and in the back, I'm still throwing eels. You know, the structure that you fish is pretty much any structure. You know, I heard people say that rocks, they don't like throwing live eels around the rocks. Well, rocks are really one of the best places to throw live eels. Open beach, throw them on the open beach. There's no reason not to throw them on the open beach. In the back bays, you know, you might want a different setup for like different conditions. Like maybe the back bays, you want maybe a 10-foot rod. This is an 11, or maybe you want even a 9-foot rod, maybe a little stiffer, maybe a little softer. I mean, that's something that you're going to have to work out when you get into live eeling, what rod specifically you want for your purpose. But basically, anywhere there's striped bass, you can throw an eel. You know, in the open surf or out of Montauk, like I said before, you want the bigger eels. In the back bay, I kind of like eels on the smaller side. I don't need to throw a 20-inch eel in the back bay. So, but anywhere is a good place to use eels. You know, we discussed this a lot on the surfratsball.com, and the Surfcasters Journal has extensive stuff on eeling. on the surfratsball.com, you get my log, there's all kinds of structure, and we really get into stuff like that, really in-depth conversations. So please consider becoming a member.
I hope you enjoyed that short segment. Now it's time for a gear review, where we review a very neat product from Storm R, a cell phone case. I know most of you guys need a cell phone case because unless you post your picture immediately on Facebook, it doesn't really count that you caught it. So take a look at it. I'm sure a lot of you will find it very useful. In recent years, most of us carry our phones when we go fishing for a multitude of reasons. I usually carry, this is a Shark Pack, little waterproof enclosure. They work fine. Sometimes it's difficult to line up these little knobs to make sure that you close it, especially at nighttime. If you're out on the rock and you're trying to line these things up, sometimes it's a nightmare. I have taken the water over the years. I want to show you a really neat product from Storm R. Like I said, this works. It's really not, I've never been too crazy about it because of difficulties of closing it. And sometimes this thing will pop out and render it useless. This is a new phone case from Storm, okay? Now you're looking at it, you're going like, okay, what is it? Well, I tell you what, this is the most ingenious thing that I ever seen. You put your phone in the case, you have magnets inside, all right? You have the thing hanging around your neck, you put your phone in, done, closed. It's got magnet, it immediately shuts itself. Not only that, if you, by some reason, don't close it, it stays open, it's still sealed. There's another set of magnets on the inside, so if this falls in the water without being closed, you're still not going to get water on. The beauty of it is obviously, you get your phone on, you put it inside, and it's closed. There's no seals to close, it's automatically closed. It's waterproof, we tried it, we dunked it in the water. It's totally clear, so you can take pictures on both sides with your phone. You can do a video underwater, whatever you want to do. It's really a neat product. Somewhere around 20 bucks, I think. It comes with a pocket size, I believe, and the XL size. But you should really check it out because this is probably the simplest mechanism to close the phone and make it waterproof that I ever seen. And whoever invented this is a genius. There's a set of magnets on the inside here that automatically seals, and then it flaps on a secondary magnet and it just closes it right up. It's time for our mailbag. One of our readers was asking us to explain to him a difference between a cone of flight, concept guides, K guides. I don't even know what those things mean, to be honest with you. But I do know a guy who's very well versed in that subject, and that's Ryan White, the exclusive distributor for Century Rods. So we asked Ryan to explain to us the difference between the concept guides, the cone of flight, the whole thing that you guys want to know about it that I know nothing about.
Concept guides are a more modern guide setup that has come out in about the past 20 years. Concept guides were designed to knock the oscillation out of the line in the first guide. So you have a choker, knocks the oscillation out, and shoots the line straight through the guides from that point on. It's thought to be more efficient than the cone of flight style, which is a large stripper with a consistent taper all the way down, which allows the line to oscillate through all of the guides. Applications for that, most of the time if you're looking for monofilament, particularly with a shock leader, a cone of flight guide layout is probably going to be your best choice for a spinning reel. If you're using braided line, I would most certainly lean more towards a choker system. Being as the braided line doesn't have as much body as the monofilament, it reacts better to the choke and running straight out of the guides than what a monofilament would. There are a few variations between the two, like you can do the majority of our factory rods are built with the K guides, which is kind of a happy medium in between the choker and the cone of flight. The lowrider guides that Fuji makes and the new microwave guides that Amtac makes, they are more of a true choker system to where it knocks the oscillation straight out and runs it straight through the guides. Personally, I do a lot of combinations of K and lowrider guides with single foot guides. I feel like personally for myself, I like the light, crisp, and true action of the blank that a lightweight guide gives you.
And now for our last segment, an in-depth interview with John Skinner, author of Striper Pursuit, about the way he fishes, the way he started fishing, basically anything and anything that we could have thought of, including why people stand at 3 a.m. in line to buy custom plugs.
I kind of enjoy doing the bucktail book. I like doing projects, and the bucktail book was an interesting project where I was able to focus on that one lure and integrate things that have happened, experiences, along with the technique descriptions, and it went really well. And I thought to myself, geez, I'd like to do that in a more comprehensive way, basically do a brain dump of how I striper fish. And it's not, I mean, I don't chunk, so there's no chunking in there and stuff like that. And I don't fish with clams, so there's none of that. But for what I do, I pretty much poured it all out into those pages. And it was just the desire to do a project like that, do a very comprehensive treatment of a subject that I'm really passionate about. Actually, the way I write it is I don't necessarily go in the order. It's like I write what I feel like writing. First of all, I just want it to be fun, and it's a winter pastime. Oh my God, we got these 5.5 months of winter. What do you do with it? And so I'm just doing it when I feel like doing it, and I write the chapters that I feel like writing at the moment, and then it's kind of fun to pull it all together into something cohesive. So I really like the whole process. My parents had a cabin cruiser, like a 26-foot Owens, in Port Jeff Harbor, and so what they would do is them and other people in the marina on weekends, they would go up into a place called Conscience Bay in Port Jeff Harbor, and they would tie their boats together, and they would do what, I don't know how old those people were back then, I guess in their 30s, they would do what 30-somethings do, or whatever, maybe they were 40 years old. They would do what those people do, which is they would party. So now you got this little kid, and what are you going to do with him to keep him out of your hair? Well, it turns out, in my case, you give him worms. And if you give him worms, he stays out of your hair. And you catch flounder, and if you're really lucky, you might catch a dogfish shark. Actually, you didn't catch stripers doing that, but blowfish, that was a great catch. But you caught stuff. And so my parents were trying to keep me out of the hair. They gave me worms, I fished, and yeah, it worked, yeah. When I was 10, we moved to Miller Place. And at the end of my street, like, 7-minute walk from my house, we lived on one of those roads that runs perpendicular to the bluffs, and then there's a big high staircase that goes down to the beach. And in 5 minutes or 7 minutes from my house, I could walk down and be on the beach. So when you're a 10-year-old, and back then, you let your kids run around, you didn't worry, and maybe you still don't have to worry too much in those settings, but geez, I could just grab a rod and go down the beach. So, I was already kind of hooked from having fished out on the boat. And of course, my father fished. He used to take us surf casting. And, so I was surf casting when I was like 7, 8 years old. And, my brother would go with us. And so they'd already got me going. So then when I could just grab my stuff and go on my own, well, that was the start of it. So from, the time I was 10, I didn't have to have anybody take me anywhere. I could just grab the stuff and go. So, yeah, that was easy. You didn't even have to think about it. I mean, imagine back, when I talk about being able to walk to the beach on the North Shore, Long Island, from when I was 10 years old on, we had fish back then. I can tell you those North Shore beaches are really, really tough right now, and they've gotten worse every year, and it just keeps getting worse. Back then, we had fish, and you go down at night with a redfin, and boof, you're getting hit. And we had big weak fish, and you know what, even if the bass were only topping out in the teens, that was a lot of fun. Hey, I got hooked. There was no stopping it. Yeah. Obviously, I don't know why I fish. But what really draws me to it is the personal challenge each time you go out, especially with surf fishing and even kayak fishing, you know, where you're dealing with the conditions and you have a lot of variables that roll into it. You know, even today, you know, it's, you know, you get some weed in the water, you've always got these obstacles to overcome, and it's really, you know, the challenge, trying to rise to the challenge of the obstacles, and yeah, you know, I think probably with humans, there's still some primitive hunter-gatherer things going on too in the brain. You know, who knows? I would like for readers to think a little more about simplification of things. Like, to me, a lot of the gear and the lure selection and all these things, you know, they can get really overblown, and you need some basic tools. And I kind of wanted to present that. I don't want to say it's minimalistic, but in a way it is. You know, I've got, you know, like I said, you know, 2 rods I can use to cover almost all surf fishing applications. And you don't have to go overboard. You don't have to get $600 rods. You know, these are just tools. You need a rod to fish. You need a halfway decent reel. And then when you get down to lures, you need some dependable types. Like, for example, you know, throughout the book I say a lot about Super Strike lures. You know, that's a tool that I can depend on. I know if I throw a darter out there in a rip, a Super Strike darter, apply water pressure to that lip, that thing's going to wobble. I know it's going to work. I can have confidence in that. One thing that I think might surprise people is I have almost no fishing network at all. You know, I've got, like, you know, one guy that boat fishes a lot that I get information from. You know, a lot of people have these big fishing networks, so they're always getting these streams of fishing information. And I don't get that. And, you know, there are times in the fall during the migration when the fish are running the beach that can work against me. But I think most of the year, not having that distraction of having, you know, all these fish stories and reports coming at me, I think that maybe works to my advantage, because I really rely on myself to find the fish. If I'm not finding the fish myself, I'm not going to catch, period. And, you know, I spend a lot of time on Google Earth looking at stuff. Google Earth is a wonderful, wonderful tool. The fact that you can go back in time and find, usually you can find some satellite imagery that will show you the structure. I mean, obviously on the open beaches, it's not as useful, but you would be surprised, even on the open beaches, how if you look back in time, a lot of the structure is more stable than you think it is, or it repeats itself over years. So, you know, I spend a lot of time looking at that. I give, in terms of large fish, and I say this in the book, I give very little thought to bait. A lot of it's pattern fishing, and it comes from experience. You know, I know that if I go to a certain location at a certain time of the year on a certain tide with a certain wind, you know, from experience, you know, I know that I can produce fish. And a lot of times when I'm fishing, I'm not always fishing for fish. I'm fishing for new spots, new patterns, like where I just mentioned that time of the year, certain tides, certain weather conditions. Well, geez, when you find one of those, it's great, because, you know, that's something that can be reproducible. So I spend a lot of thought trying to find those patterns, not necessarily trying to find the school of fish that's running down the beach today, but to know where those fish are going to set up under particular circumstances. White is never wrong. I have to say, though, at night, inlet bucktailing, it's getting to the point that I'm almost not even putting the white on anymore. I'm just using wine red all the time. And, you know, that's come from decades of, you know, thinking, okay, yeah, wine red gives me an edge, yeah, you know, it's a little bit better than white. It's gotten to the point that I'm not even putting the white on anymore. So that's one real preference I have on color. Other than that, oh yeah, if you had all white, you know, you'd be fine. Obviously, if you're on a mullet run, you want blue. If you're on a herring run, you want blue. But yeah, I try to keep it simple, and especially, you know, you're fishing at night. You know, if you got some white plugs, some darker plugs, you're good. Suppose I'm casting with a Daiwa Salt Pro. Well, it's got, I guess I'm putting 2 OVMCs on that. I'm not going to fish locked down on that, so I hook a good fish. Yeah, maybe something's going to straighten. if I'm fishing rigged eels, live eels in the inlet, yeah, that drag is just about locked. And even there are some places where I fish 30-pound braid with rigged eels. Even in those, in fact, it's on this rod, on this 9-footer. Even in those circumstances, the drag's almost locked. And here's the thing, you know, the larger striped bass, they are not very fast out of the box. When you get a hit, if you need to back down, you've got a little time to back down on the drag. And to me, the important thing on those big fish is that hook set. When I set that hook, I do not want to hear that drag slipping because I'm just losing power on the hook set. And you know, if you get a chance to look closely at a 40-pound bass, take your finger, feel around the inside of its mouth, you're going to wonder, how does anybody ever penetrate a hook into that? And to me, that's the most important thing. Sink that hook. And I can only think of one time where I got burned by having the drag locked, and what had happened was it was raining, it was not a waterproof drag, it was a long time ago, and the drag had gotten wet, and I had a fish that was up around 35, 40 pounds, and I had tightened down because the drag was wet, and I couldn't loosen down in time, and it broke me off. That sticks in my head. That was in the 1990s. That's the only time that I've broken a fish off because I couldn't back down fast enough on a drag. I guess what freaked me out was going down, it was in Jersey, I guess it's Berkeley, the Berkeley show, pretty sure that's the one. And there are guys lined up outside this place in the dark, like they're going to some, buying World Series tickets or something. And what they're doing is they're waiting to get in, to then stand on a line to buy a rationed number of custom pencil poppers for like, I think they were $30. I think I even saw $35 plugs. And the funny thing was is that these guys were lined up in front of my table and I was trying to unload some old stuff. So I had like $2 Creek Chubs and Adams, perfectly good plugs, and they wouldn't touch them, but you know, they're buying these $35 pencils. Well, you know what? Take a Tsunami talking popper. I consider that a pencil. It's $9. It's an awesome plug. It's also something you can modify. Drill a hole in it, put some water in, make it a little bit heavier. You know, a really nice customizable plug. Fish love it. So, you know, it just kills me to see $35 lose. And I understand, you know, people are collecting them and so forth. But, you know, something I say in the book is, you know, you hear this notion of buy the best that you can. And buy the best you can afford. That's actually the saying. And yeah, all right, despite the look of my Jeep, you know, I'm not poor. I can afford to spend some money on fishing gear, but my philosophy is buy what you need. And yeah, I need dependable, my example in the book is when I fish the inlet, I need a dependable strong reel. And I've used the Penn 706Z forever for that. Yeah, it's, you know, not an $800 reel, but you know what? It does the job. It's a really good reel. It works for me, and I have a lot of confidence in it. And if it ever gets to the point that I have, like, you know, loads of money I don't know what to do with, I'll buy waterfront property before I'm going to spend a lot more money than I need to on surf fishing gear. Again, these are tools. There's no reason to go overboard with it. You know, this rod, I don't know, I'm sure I built it for like $150. And, you know, it's going to last forever. I know that because my 1990 Lamiglass has literally caught tons of fish in the inlet, banged around all over the place. You know, it's still going strong. They don't break. And yeah, and the same goes with reels. I mean, yeah, I've got a high-end reel here, a Penn Torque. So I do have a couple of nice things. But you know what? The Penn SSV, I've got a bunch of those. They're great reels. If you look at the bulk of my stuff, you're only going to find the two of the high-end reels. And honestly, both of them were gifts. So yeah, anything I've ever purchased myself, they're not $800 reels, yeah. The pattern I hate the most is the fall run along the open beaches. I can't tell you, even in the good years, how many times I sit there going, I hate the fall, I hate the fall. And the reason is that a school of bunker goes by, a school of mullet goes by, and you can hear like the sucking sound while it just sucked all your fish with it. And you know, things are on the move, very hard to predict. I hate it. So that's the one I don't like. Now the spring, oh, it's so much easier. You don't have all that migrating bait and yet you do have migrating bait, right? I mean, one thing that always entertains me is that, you know, people wait in the fall for, you know, the blitzing and the big shows of birds and bait and fish, but all those fish come here in the spring, and yet you don't hardly ever see any of that. The stuff moves a lot more quietly, more predictably. You know if you go, you know, inlets are a good example. It used to be the case on the North Shore, not so much anymore. You know, if you go to certain locations, certain tides, times of the year, those fish are going to be set up there. So, yeah, love the spring, early summer, fall, I can find pretty frustrating. But, you know, the best thing you can do to maximize productivity in the fall is stay off the beach during the daytime, go at night. You know, I mean, don't even go to the beach. If sunset is 5:30, you know, don't even show up at 5 o'clock, because it's going to be damn near 2 hours before you have real darkness. By then, if you're not catching anything, you're going to be tired, you're going to leave. You know, show up in the dark, start in the dark, yeah.